Welcome to the Hyperpolyglot Activist, Learn Languages, Make a Difference. My name is Dr. Carlos Sierra Lopez, and today we're going to tackle a fundamental question. Are there really untranslatables? Is there such a thing as a word or a term that cannot possibly be translated? Let's find out. As you can see on the screen, untranslatable is a very contested term. It's by no means self-evident. The question, are there really untranslatables, is perhaps too broad to be answered in its own terms. So I think we need to distinguish here between denotation on the one hand and connotation on the other. So this is what I will do in this presentation. I will inquire what is translation, what is denotation and can it be translated, and finally what is connotation and can that be translated. So translation. Translating just means rendering something from the source language, from language A, into the target language, language B. So it's about rendering something. Now, there is always a way of rendering something from the source language into the target language. Or, in the words of Floyd Mayweather,
I always find a way to get the job done.
So, if there's always a way, what are these words? What are untranslatables? The whole doctrine of untranslatability, the whole idea that there are words that cannot be translated, assumes that a translation should realize the imagined perfect relationship with the original text. And that's an idea that is presented in, for instance, works by Walter Benjamin. Untranslatability, perhaps even more problematically, implies a kind of essentialism, nationalism, and the idea that at least some languages contain their own incommensurable cognitive universe or worldview. Or as put by Alexandra Jaffe, when translators talk about untranslatable, they often reinforce the notion that each language has its own genius, an essence that naturally sets it apart from all other languages and reflects something of the soul of its culture or people. Michael Wood adds, the danger is that at some point the specificity will be some kind of essence, some stereotype, that every French person will be impeccably French and every Englishman impeccably English. So here the idea is that by saying that the word is utterly untranslatable, we're making it look as though the differences between cultures are unbridgeable, that we cannot possibly establish a connection between cultures. And so we are kind of essentializing or stereotyping other languages and therefore other cultures. So can denotation be translated?
Denotation is, of course, the literal meaning of a word.
What is the problem? The problem is that sometimes there is no one-to-one equivalence between the term in the source language and another term in the target language. For instance, take the Spanish term sobremesa, which literally means over table. However, over table is not a word used in English. So what's a possible solution? Well, avoiding this lexical gap with a circumlocution, meaning with the use of a larger number of words. So here's a circumlocution of sobremesa. It's time spent at the table after eating. Is the habit of relaxing at the table after a heavy meal. So we might not have a specific word like over table, which would be the literal equivalent, but we can always explain it with more words. And to this, translator Lucy Greaves adds that I can go for the word or phrase that I believe has the closest meaning to the original. I might choose to include the following word in italics and either trust that there is enough contextual information for my readers to work out what it means, or sneak in a short explanatory phrase. I try to avoid using footnotes because they interrupt the flow of the text. Sometimes there's even a case to be made for inventing a new word in English, to fill the gap highlighted by the foreign concept. So as you can see, there is a variety of options, and we can always translate the denotation of any given term. How about connotation? Can connotation be translated? Well, connotation is, first of all, the idea or feeling that a word evokes in addition to its literal meaning. So it's somewhat more elusive, and therefore it is harder to translate. It is harder to render in the target language. So Michael Wood, for instance, says that untranslatability really is not our inability to render a term in the source language into a target language, but is rather that nagging feeling that you're missing something interesting when you try to explain its meaning. And that something interesting, that layer of meaning, that nuance, is the connotation. But does that mean that the word itself is untranslatable? Well, Barbara Cassin makes a different case, and she says, not only is the word not untranslatable, but actually those words that are the most difficult to render in the target language are those we need to translate the most. So paradoxically, being untranslatable is very close to being the subject of a constant translation. In the words of Barbara Cassin, a so-called untranslatable is actually a word with so much nuance that you can't stop translating it in your efforts to get it just right. So there are two problems here posed by connotation. The first one is ineffability, which is to say, the fact that some things are incapable of being expressed in words. Some things we have to experience, we have to be shown. We cannot be explained with just words, no matter how long the circumlocution is. And the second problem is iconicity, which is to say the relationship of resemblance between the form and the aspect of a sign. So for instance, Gilad Zuckerman, whom we interviewed in this YouTube channel, once said that the reason why hallelujah or amen had not been translated often is that there is a very strong iconicity to these. And so if you lose the sound, you lose an important part of the meaning. So in conclusion, are there really untranslatables? Well, while every term is translatable in its denotation, the connotation of some of them can be said to belong to the realm of untranslatability. So I really hope this clarified the question of untranslatability for you. Let me know if you have any doubts or questions in the comments down below. And as always, thanks for watching.